Okay, it's that time of season now where I suppose we take into consideration our health. And on the show now we have Dr. Louise Durrant, and we're talking about vitamin D today. And a lot of people know about vitamin C, like orange juice and broccoli and black currants. But vitamin D is often kind of put aside, isn't it? Um, in general.
Yeah, I think people know of vitamin D as the sunshine vitamin. So we can make vitamin D from exposure, our skin exposure to sunlight. But actually, when it comes to dietary sources of vitamin D, there aren't that many dietary sources. So there are some foods like oily fish, your sardines, salmon, mackerel, red meat, and eggs. But really, there aren't many sources that we can rely on.
And I've got here in my notes a couple of things which contain vitamin D. Not necessarily foods, but I've got sunlight, as you said, and UV lamps as well.
So yeah, they can give you a little bit of vitamin D sometimes. It can depend on the brand of the UV light and whether they emit the right rays. So there's a particular wavelength of light that you need to get your skin exposed to make vitamin D. And the best way to work out if you can make vitamin D outdoors is by measuring the length of your shadow. So if your shadow is shorter than your height, you'll be making vitamin D. But if your shadow is longer, then you won't be able to make vitamin D, even if it's a glorious sunny day. So that means throughout all of the winter months, between the months of October and March in the UK, we can't make any vitamin D at all. So we make a supply in the summer months, but then during the winter, we can't make any. And so we really need to start thinking about our dietary sources during the winter.
And we'll come on to the sources shortly. In brief, what are the benefits of vitamin D?
So it's really important for our bone health and our muscle function. So bone health is really what it's well known for. If we have a healthy vitamin D level, it helps us to absorb calcium from the diet, and that's then beneficial for our bones. If we have a low vitamin D status, in children it can lead to rickets, which is a bending and a bowing of the bones. And in older adults, it can lead to osteomalacia, which is bone pain, and osteoporosis, which is a weakening of the bone structure and increases our risk of fracture. There's also some evidence to suggest there's a benefit for our immune health and just helping to maintain our normal immune function as well.
Excellent. And what happens if your vitamin D is too low? I know you did mention a bit about deficiency as well.
Yeah, so it's actually really hard to detect when your vitamin D levels are low. So there aren't that many symptoms. Yes, you might suffer from some bone pain and you might develop rickets in children or osteoporosis in adults. But actually, by that point, you probably have vitamin D deficiency for a prolonged period. So that's why it's really important to be thinking about where we're getting our vitamin D from, and taking supplements if we need to. So think about those dietary sources. How much sun exposure are we getting in the summer months? But perhaps supplements in the winter months as well. So the government currently advised between October and March that we consider taking a vitamin D supplement containing about 10 micrograms of vitamin D.
Okay, and you mentioned this kind of quarter now where vitamin D is low in people. Has low vitamin D been accelerated by the lockdown and staying indoors?
Absolutely. So I think there's been a lot of reports around vitamin D and coronavirus, but there is no evidence, or the evidence isn't strong enough to suggest that vitamin D can help to prevent coronavirus or treat coronavirus. But what we do know is that people have been advised and are spending more time indoors, particularly over the summer period we've just had. And so it's likely that we didn't get the same summer boost in vitamin D levels that we would normally get. So it's probable that we've got a higher level of vitamin D deficiency this winter than we've had any other winter. And so vitamin D, thinking about our dietary sources of vitamin D, is more important this winter than it has ever been before.
Okay, and you mentioned that you might not think vitamin D would combat COVID-19 directly, but would it help alleviate some of the symptoms?
But at the moment, there isn't the evidence to suggest that. So we can't say that it's going to help with the treatment of coronavirus if you did get it as well. But in general, we still need to consider our bone health and our general immune function. So vitamin D is important regardless of coronavirus. It's just that coronavirus might have exacerbated the number of people that are deficient this winter.
Yeah. And do vitamin D pills work just as helpful in elderly people as young people? And also, is the NHS offering free daily vitamin D supplements to those who are high at risk?
Yeah, so vitamin D supplements, you can access them in chemists, in supermarkets, and they're all effective at raising your vitamin D levels. There's also lots of fortified foods on the market as well, so products that have had vitamin D added into them during the production process. And you'll see that on the label. They'll normally say that they added vitamin D. And that's things like breakfast cereals, yogurt drinks, even something like Yakult Light has recently had vitamin D added into it as well. So there are dietary sources out there as well as the supplement forms.
And can it help with SAD, seasonal affective disorder, vitamin D? Can it boost your immune to kind of make you feel happier in the morning?
Yeah, so quite often vitamin D is linked to SAD and seasonal affective disorder, but actually the evidence isn't there to show that vitamin D can improve your mood or prevent depression. But it's just that the season is a similar time to when you might suffer from vitamin D deficiency. So getting outdoors is important across the year, regardless of whether you're making vitamin D or not. But in the summer months, obviously, you can go outdoors to make vitamin D, and in the winter months, you won't make it even if you're outdoors and it's lovely and sunny.
And further statistics reported say 8 out of 10 people think they'll still get enough vitamin D in the winter months, even though that's impossible.
Yeah, this was a survey that Yakult commissioned, and we saw 80% think they can make vitamin D from being outdoors in the winter, but really they can't. So there's probably a large proportion of people who are outdoors in the winter, think they're making their vitamin D, and therefore aren't necessarily thinking about their dietary sources. So this is a bit of a reminder to those people that they need to think about where they're getting vitamin D from the diet, and then also perhaps consider a supplement if they really need to. There was also some interesting stats. About 20% of people think they can make vitamin D when they're sat next to a window on a sunny day. But actually the window stops the sunlight from getting to your skin and allowing you to make vitamin D. So that's a bit of a myth as well.
Yeah. And do you have any website suggestions or links, or are there any books you've written which might help my listeners?
So I would always recommend the NHS UK website. That has a really good page on vitamin D. It tells you about the benefits, sources, and also has information about the free vitamin D supplement that I forgot to mention earlier. So those who are vulnerable to coronavirus and were perhaps advised to shield during the pandemic can access vitamin D supplements for free. And you'll be able to find that information through the NHS website as well.
Well, thank you very much for informing us about vitamin D, telling the listener a bit more about it as well. It's been wonderful to have you on, Dr Louise Durrant, on the Danny Sun Syndicated Radio Show.
Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.